The lie that floated, building an industry as cover. Here's where things get interesting. The CIA needed a story big enough to hide a ship you couldn't miss. They didn't invent one, they borrowed it. In the late 60s, science magazines buzzed about manganese nodules, black rocks littering abyssal plains. Inside them, manganese, nickel, cobalt, enough metal to tempt entire industries. Engineers drew sketches of futuristic ships vacuuming the seafloor. Investors nodded. Governments funded studies. The hype was real. Perfect. A mining craze explains anything strange at sea. Long deployments, odd gear, secrecy. You don't answer questions because proprietary research. You wrap your crane in jargon. Heave compensation becomes station keeping for pipe strings. A moon pool becomes coarse sampling access. The cover writes itself. But a story needs a face. They called Howard Hughes. Eccentric billionaire, aviation legend, recluse. He already lived in whispers. If he built a ship and wouldn't talk about it, that tracked. His holding company, Summer, could sign contracts nobody would see. A real marine contractor, Global Marine, could draw up plausible plans. Real patents, real engineers, real steel. Only the mission was fake. This wasn't a cartoon front. Money flowed, paper moved, offices buzzed. Mock R&D reports circulated about nodules and drill strings. Vendors built real equipment that could do real mining, because under the lie sat the truth. The gear had to work. It just had to work for a different job. They stacked the shell like nesting dolls. Summer at the top, Global Marine underneath, special purpose subsidiaries under that. Each layer paid the next, all clean on audit. If a reporter dug, they'd find contracts that matched the story. If a committee asked, they'd see business plans, site surveys, and letters of intent for manganese fields nobody would ever visit. They named the ship the Hughes Glomar Explorer. Glomar for Global Marine, Explorer for curiosity. The hull would hide a cathedral, a moon pool opening through the centerline, large enough to swallow a submarine section without anyone topside seeing. Above it, a derrick taller than a church. Beside it, a heave compensation system that could make the ocean feel tame. Under it, a capture vehicle built in secret, Clementine, designed to clamp a bow like a hand. The cover did more than explain parts. It explained behavior, why the ship needed dynamic positioning to hold steady over a mine site, why it stayed put for weeks, trial runs on the seafloor, why crews changed without fanfare, rotation on a classified commercial project. Everything suspicious became reasonable when filtered through the right line. The press loved the Hughes angle. The mythical billionaire returns with a new frontier. Mining the deep, cable networks ran graphics of robotic arms picking up fist-sized rocks. Journalists toured deck plates and saw cranes and labs and miles of pipe. They were shown everything that didn't matter and nothing that did. The moon pool remained a bland phrase. The derrick became a photo op, not an implication. The best cover is truth trimmed of its meaning. It wasn't just media muscle. The legal armor mattered even more. Lawyers in Langley and Lowe's Angels wrote contracts that declared secrets as property, proprietary data, trade secrets, confidential methodologies. Anyone sniffing around hit a wall that said, commercial. Questions died there. Courts respect business privacy in a way they don't respect spies. Meanwhile, the Soviets watched. They saw a strange ship with an odd silhouette loiter in blue water. A trawler swung close and logged the hull. A mining vessel mid-ocean. Possible, plausible, hard to prove otherwise when the world had just convinced itself of the coming nodule boom. That was the point. Let the lie do the work. Inside, compartmentation carved the truth into pieces. Welders knew steel. Electricians knew power. Navigators knew routes. Almost nobody knew why. The handful who did spoke in euphemism and numbers. The name Azorian stayed inside a safe. If a rumor leaked on deck, it drowned in the bigger rumor. Hughes is weird. He asks for strange things. That line shut mouths faster than any clearance form. They built noise around the signal. Hughes's personal drama, the Las Vegas years, the reclusiveness. Every tabloid story about his curtains and Kleenex pushed the ship 1 inch farther into eccentric billionaire does eccentric billionaire things. A different kind of Glomar response took shape without anyone saying the words. Ask, and they'd shrug. Neither confirm nor deny. Not yet in court, already in practice. Contractors wrestled the calendar. The keel went down in Chester, Pennsylvania. Launch dates slid. Budget lines groaned. A union strike at a bad moment almost killed the timing window. The program ate money and secrecy at the same rate. Nixon's signature kept it alive. That part never went in the press kit. By the time the hull gleamed and the derrick rose, the lie floated by itself. Science press, patent filings, vendor brochures. The ship looked like the future because it was, just not the future anyone thought. They had built a mythical beast that could stand in daylight and still hide. The question was no longer, can we cover it? It was, will the cover hold when the ocean fights back? Steele was ready to find out. The giant claw, designing a ship that shouldn't exist. Here's where things get crazy. On paper, it looked simple. Put a ship over a wreck, drop a tool through its belly, grab a submarine section, and lift 1,700 tons straight up through 3 miles of water without snapping anything. In reality, every line hid a trap. The CIA stood up a special project staff under John Parangoski, quiet, relentless, already famous for getting miracles into the sky. Ernest Zeke Zelmer, a submarine man, ran the grind day to day. They had a code name, Azorian, and a deadline no one put on a calendar. The ocean doesn't wait for politics. The hull came first. Hughes Glomar Explorer couldn't look like a warship. It had to sell as a commercial platform while hiding an engineering cathedral. The design centered on a moon pool, a silent hole through the ship's centerline, so a captured bow could rise from black water into a dry, hidden bay. No cranes swinging over the side. No showy gear for Soviet lenses. Everything important happened inside. But a moon pool is useless if the ship wanders. The sea always pushes, so they built dynamic positioning into the bones. Thrusters tied to gyros and Doppler sensors would fight wind and current, inch by inch, to keep the hull pinned over a single set of coordinates. It wasn't optional. Miss by a dozen feet at the surface, and you're off by hundreds below. In 1974, that kind of station keeping at this scale wasn't standard. It was lunacy that had to work. Waves were the second enemy. A heave compensation system sat between the derrick and the tool string, giant hydraulics tuned to counter the ship's rise and fall. If a swell lifted the deck a meter, the cylinders paid out exactly that much line, smoothing motion, until the claw below felt almost nothing. Almost. Because at 16,500 feet, small jerks at the top become violent tugs down deep. A bad gust could turn steel into glass. Then came Clementine, the capture vehicle. Call it a claw if you want, but it was closer to a skeletal barge the size of a house, built from high-strength steel, braced like a bridge, and hung from miles of pipe string. It carried cameras, lights, sonars, latches like iron knuckles, and hydraulic hearts that had to pump at near-freezing temperatures in crushing pressure. The plan: lower, straddle the forward section, bite, lock, and then trust metallurgy. Weight was a war. Every backup system added pounds. Every camera, every light, every brace. Add too much and the structure would sag at depth, bending just enough to misalign a latch. Too little and a single failure would be fatal. Engineers argued in meetings that felt like courtroom dramas. One more strut, one less hose, a stronger aller, a heavier flange. They traded safety margins like poker chips and prayed their math stayed ahead of the ocean. Welds were religion. At these loads, a hairline flaw becomes a scream. Welding teams trained, tested, cut their own work apart to learn where joints lied. X-rays glowed through steel like medical scans. Any suspicion meant do it again. The cause of the sinking didn't matter to the metal, but the truth that a golf-class hull lay on its side did. The geometry wasn't neat. Clementine had to grip an imperfect corpse. Telemetry was primitive by today's standards. Grainy camera feeds rode cokes, dim light flared in snowflake silt, images lagged. Operators steered by sonar outlines and patience. You didn't joystick this thing, you coaxed it. You watched the waterfall of noise for right-angled shadows and learned to love shades of gray. Cost detonated. By the summer of '71, paper screamed overruns. An executive committee considered killing it. The intelligence community lined up to say no, too risky, too expensive, too political. Then Nixon weighed the secrets on the table against the price and signed to continue. The keel went down in November at Sun's ship in Chester. Schedules looked pretty on slides. Reality laughed. A Union strike hit at a bad moment. Launch dates slid. While lawyers and negotiators argued, engineers sharpened. They added redundancy to the heave cylinders, tuned sensors, and rehearsed failure modes. What if a latch jammed? What if a ballast line froze? What if a camera died in the black? The only safe answer: reconfigure on the fly without surfacing. That meant valves reachable in gloves, panels arranged by muscle memory, and labels a man could read in panic. They built the internal garage like a stage. When the bow rose through the moon pool, giant doors would close, water pumped, and a dry theater would appear. Crews would work inside a steel cocoon, far from trawler binoculars, stripping wreckage like surgeons. That demanded drainage paths, bilge pumps sized for catastrophe, and a plan for something nobody wanted to say out loud: radiation. 2 T-5 nuclear torpedoes might be in that forward section. If their high explosive cooked wrong on impact, fissile cores could be compromised. They didn't know. So they wired in monitoring, stockpiled decon kits, and trained sailors to be priests as much as riggers. Respect, procedure, no shortcuts. The last integration felt unreal. Global Marine's public deck plans covered private guts. Clementine came together in pieces, tested where no one asked questions, then vanished into the belly. Vendors delivered meter-long bolts like sacrament. You could read capability in a single room and still not see the mission. That was the point. By the time Glomar Explorer eased down the channel, the lie floated, the steel was ready, and the ocean was waiting. The math said it would hold. The physics said it might. The sea promised nothing. Next, they'd aim a skyscraper at a target the size of a house key, 3 miles below, with the world watching without knowing. The first descent would tell them if they'd built a miracle or a tomb. The first descent into 16,500 feet of silence. June 1974. Long beach fades. The Hughes Glomar Explorer slides into blue water with 24 vans of classified gear bolted inside and a secret shape like a claw sleeping over a moon pool. On June 7, the president signs the go. One condition: don't start lifting until he's back from Moscow. Timing isn't just politics, it's cover. July 4. Fireworks ash the mainland. Out here, nothing moves but swell and steel. The ship reaches the box AFTAC and SOSUS pinned years earlier. No flags, no fanfare, just a floating factory and a set of coordinates that could trigger a war if said out loud. Soviet eyes appear almost immediately. A trawler idles beyond the bow, net booms up, cameras out. Another vessel hangs on the horizon line, too interested, never close enough to spook. The cover holds because it has to. Mining survey, measurements, proprietary. The crew waves like they've got nothing to hide and everything to do. Inside, the ship transforms. Hatches lock, badges click. The moon pool floods. Clementine stirs. This is where it gets real. The capture vehicle rolls into the wet like a sleeping animal, then hangs, trembling only as much as hydraulic compensation allows. Operators in a dim control room watch 3 kinds of light at once. Cathode ray monitors glow with grainy, snow-flecked gray. Oscilloscope waterfalls sketch noise in thin lines. A sonar display outlines shadows like chalk on a cave wall. There's delay in everything. A nudge at the surface takes seconds to show up in the deep. Patience is oxygen. Dynamic positioning fights a patient war. Wind pushes. Current slides. Thrusters argue back, centimeter by centimeter. The ship holds station to within feet because if it doesn't, you're off by yards below, then tens, then the contour you aimed for becomes a rumor. The heave compensation lives up to its promise. A swell lifts the bow. The cylinders pay out. A trough dips. They pull in. Machines make the deck feel like marble. 10 meters away, you can still feel the sea. Down in the moon pool, the surface skims like glass around a hanging monster. Clementine starts down. 3 miles of descent teaches humility fast. At 100 feet, sunlight is memory. At 1,000, your world is instruments. The pipe string hums with slow, living tension, gravity and buoyancy arguing through steel. Every 100 meters, the crew calls numbers like a liturgy. Pay out, check load, check temp, cameras on, cameras off to cool. Hydraulics whisper under pressure. Time gets weird. A lowering that would take minutes in air takes hours here. Men who could sprint a missile drill move like monks. They drink coffee they can't taste. They speak in clipped phrases because too many words feel like weight. Halfway down, the ocean begins to ice their world. Hydraulic fluid thickens as degrees drop. A backup pump kicks on like a second heartbeat. Telemetry jitters, then steadies. The operators don't talk about what happens if the lines freeze. They just watch gauges and trust the redundancy they argued into the design. The trawler is still there on the surface, a patient silhouette. A second Soviet hull drifts closer, then backs off. The deck watch logs the movement in tight script. No radio chatter, no drama, just eyes. At 3 miles down, the world is simple and cruel. Pressure wants to turn everything into quiet mistakes. Clementine's frame creaks the way ships creak in Arctic ice. Small, honest noises that say the math is close to the edge and holding. Then the sonar sees it. A smear of right angles resolves into a slope, a bigger shape lying like a fallen tower. Operators ease throttle the way a surgeon eases a scalpel. Lights flick on. Silt blooms. They wait for the snow to settle, then push again. There it is, the bow, torn plates, a lip of steel like a rusted grin, latches glint in ghost light. Someone swears softly, not fear, recognition. The choreography that follows looks like hesitation and is actually courage. Clementine must straddle without touching what isn't meant to be touched. A nudge here tilts 2,000 tons there. The moon pool crew calls out fractions. The derrick crew breathes with the hydraulics. The control room walks the machine forward in inches. Contact. Not an impact, a settling. Latches open like teeth and then close until a hydraulic sigh says bite. Strain gauges flutter toward red, then sit, trembling under load. Up top, the heave system leans into its dance. Down below, Clementine and a Soviet bow become one problem. Load on, someone says. It sounds like a prayer. The first lift has a taste to it. Metal in the mouth. You can't explain it if you haven't felt a ship take on weight it didn't have a second ago. Everyone on board knows it. The Glomar Explorer grows heavier, and the ocean begins to remember. Hours spool. The pipe string comes up section by section, men walking tongs and spinning joints with a rhythm that lived in all fields before it lived here. Each stand gets broken, swung, racked. Another descends to take its place. A factory loop around a secret heart. Half a day in, the sea slaps the hull like it's bored, the Soviets' shadow. Inside the moon pool, the black circle is just blacker. In the control room, a hairline on a gauge quivers, then settles. Someone marks it. Someone else doesn't breathe for 3 seconds. A weld pops somewhere in the world, and everyone hears it in their teeth. It's not a failure. It's steel talking, the kind of talk you don't ignore. Then the ship shudders a little differently. It takes a second to realize why. Clementine and the bow are no longer resting on the bottom. They're hanging in water, alone. That's the point where some men start to believe, and others start to worry more. The climb has only begun. The ocean has all the time in the world. Up top, a Soviet deckhand lights a cigarette and watches history he can't see. Below, every inch of rise brings you closer to a decision you can't take back. The break when steel screamed. It starts as a sound you feel before you hear, a new vibration in the deck plates, a note the ship hasn't played yet. Then the meter nudges higher, the pen trembles, and every man on watch knows what that means. The load is alive. Hours stack into a day. The pipe string comes up joint by joint. Each stand swings, breaks, racks. The heave system breathes, thrusters murmur. Clementine and the bow ride in black water, 3 miles up from where they started, 3 miles down from where they need to be. Nothing gives, nothing dramatic. Just steel doing math at the limits of trust. Then the ocean reminds them it's not impressed. A swell line shifts. Compensation catches most of it, not all. The load spikes for a heartbeat. A shadow of stress ripples through the pipe. Gauges jump. The hiss of hydraulics sharpens. Everyone goes quiet. It happens fast after that. A noise like a groan amplified by miles. Not snapping, not yet. More like an old ship turning in ice. A subtle shudder runs through the derrick, down the string, into the deep. On a monitor, a faint flicker swims. A latch camera shows a sliver of motion where none should be. A brace sings in a way no one wants. Hold, the word buys seconds. Metal screams. Not a cinematic crack. A drawn-out, throat-tearing wail that crawls up the ship's spine. One finger goes, then another. Clementine's frame deforms exactly the way models said it might if luck ran out. The forward section shifts inside the capture arms. Weight redistributes into angles that were never in the plan. Up top, men flinch at a sound from a place their ears have never been. Down below, the camera's judder smear lose the picture. The load meter surges as mass moves outside the centerline. Hydraulics hit their range and stay there. Compensation can't cancel everything. Physics is in the room now. Then the drop, not all at once. A sliding away. You can't see it from the deck. You can feel it in your feet. Tens of tons leave the system like someone unkinked a vein. The gauge falls, steadies, falls again. 2/3 of what Clementine holds lets go and returns to the pressure that made it. Down there, it will hit bottom and become pieces. Silence follows that nobody trusts. What's left in the jaws is the forward section, shorter than they wanted, heavier than it looks. Torpedo room, torn bow, maybe crypto scraps in a compartment that didn't fail. The conning tower is gone. The missile bay is gone. The vault they dreamed of is back on the seafloor. The most valuable secrets just slipped into darkness and took the safest version of the operation with them. Now comes the choice. Abort and dump the rest. Pretend nothing happened. Sail away under a cover story that now feels thin. Or lift what you still have, under Soviet eyes, with a wounded machine and a risk curve that just bent against you. This isn't a vote so much as a reckoning. The mission director stares at numbers that smell like money burned and years spent. The engineering lead runs through failure modes and sees enough margin in the survivors to keep going. The deck boss listens to the ship and says the derrick can take it if the sea behaves. No one speaks the word missiles. They don't have to. They lift. Above them, a Soviet trawler circles a hair closer. Another hull swings down the horizon. Nobody yells. Nobody waves. The watch logs positions like it's any other day. Inside, crates get stacked on the helideck to deny a landing. In a binder, a page sits ready for a phrase no one wants to use: emergency destruction. The ship's heart goes slow again, joint by joint, stand by stand. Less mass now, different dynamics. The remaining section behaves. The compensation flats smooth. The gauges hum like they want to apologize for the last 5 minutes. And still every man knows what steel can do when it decides to go its own way. Hours later, the load feels near. The way the ship answers tells you before the camera does. Then the black circle of the moon pool brightens just a shade, and a torn lip of Soviet steel rises out of it like a ghost surfacing. The doors close, the bay seals, pumps howl, and water drains fast enough to look like the ocean leaving. What's on the cradle sends a strange quiet through the room. Torn plates, crushed frames, the kind of damage that records forces better than instruments. And inside the forward compartment, shock. Not hardware, not paper, human. Remains. Gloves go on, voices go soft. Men who just fought an impossible machine now move like chaplains. They lay hands on what's left and understand the line they've stepped across. This isn't a trophy, it's a grave. They came here for codes and missiles. They got something else, something that will be harder to carry back than any metal. And while they stand there, breathing that new air, someone says what everyone knows is coming next. Get ready, the press will smell this, and Moscow already does. The break didn't just tear steel, it shredded the clean version of the story. What they brought up will still matter. What fell will haunt them. And the world beyond the hull is about to ask questions no one is allowed to answer.